Hello, dear friends. I'd like to say some words from Parashat Vayetze, which I said this past Shabbat in Tel Aviv, at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue where I teach. And let me just start with a small quote of William Shakespeare, who in the 12th night said, "Some were born to greatness, and some achieve greatness, and some of greatness thrust upon them." And I'm going to give some examples. Jeremiah was born to greatness because God says in chapter 1, "From the time you were in your mother's womb, I knew that you would be a prophet." But Jeremiah is not only born to greatness, he's thrust into greatness. Why? Because when God says to him, you're now a prophet, he says, "I'm a young guy." Na'ar is the term, which means like 12 or 13 years old. "I don't know how to talk. How can I be a prophet?" And God says, "You're going to be a prophet because I'm going to be with you. And I'll show you how to do this." So he didn't really want to be it, but he was thrust into greatness and then he succeeded. Another example, Moses. Moses, born into greatness because not only is from the tribe of Levi, but he's adopted by Pharaoh's daughter and he grows up in the palace like a prince. And he wants to save his people, but he's not able to do it. And years later, God appears to him in the burning bush, says, "Moses, I've heard what happened in Egypt, and I know the screams and I know the affliction. I want to send you down there." Moses says, "Shlach na biat tishlach," maybe send somebody else. And God says, "No, you're going to be there. If you can't speak well, Aaron will speak in your behalf, but you're going down." That's what I call being born into greatness and having greatness thrust upon you, because in both cases, they didn't seem to want the task, but excelled at the task. And the third one is this week's parsha is Yaakov. Yaakov, the son of Isaac, the grandson of Abraham, was born into greatness. However, it didn't look like he wanted it. It was his mother said, "You have to take the blessing." So I don't. From Yaakov's point of view, do I care if God gave a blessing to my brother through my father? Why can't my father give Esav a blessing? Why should I take it away from him? His mother says, "No, I heard something that you didn't hear, and therefore you have to take this blessing." Okay, he takes the blessing. Esav becomes angry, and Esau wants to kill him, and now he has to go to Laban's house. And he runs away to Laban's house. And on the way, in this week's parasha, God appears to him on the way to Laban's house in what we call the dream of the ladder. And there's a ladder he sees standing on the earth and going up to the heavens. And he sees angels going up and down this ladder. And the top of the ladder, God appears and says, "I am the God of your fathers, Abraham and Isaac. And the land that you are now resting upon, this land I give to you and to your children, your children's children. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed through you and your children. And I will be with you wherever you go, and I will not leave you, and I'll watch over you, and I'll bring you back to this land." And Yaakov wakes up and says, "Wow, I didn't realize where I am. God is in this place. This place, it is the house of God and the gate to heaven." But then something unusual happens. Now that, if you want to say, greatness was thrust upon him, which I'll explain in a moment what I mean, Yaakov because of course God appears to him here directly. And all the things that his father said, God says to him directly. His father told him, "You'll get the blessing of Abraham with the land." And God says the same thing. But then Yaakov makes a neder. He makes a vow. He takes a vow. First, he calls the place there the house of God, Beit El, and its name was before Luz, and then he makes a vow. And the vow goes like this: "If God will watch over me in my travels, being to the house of Laban, and will give me bread to eat, and clothing to wear, and bring me back to my father's house in peace, then God will be my God. And that this stone that I put as a monument, it will be the beginning of the house of God. And everything that you give me, I will give 1/10 away. Now, this is a little bit puzzling. Why is Jacob taking this vow? Because it sounds conditional. If you do this, if you do that, you watch over me, you give me bread, you watch over me, bring me back. Then, what does that mean? And without that condition, God is not God. It just sounds a little bit ungrateful. What's going on? So I want to explain it, and I'm going to explain it actually based on a hint in the Midrash Tanchuma. The Midrash Tanchuma, one of the older Midrashim, which Rashi quotes a lot, on this week's Parsha Vayetze Gimel. So there is, Rabbi Brechia says, everything that Jacob asked for from the Holy One, blessed be he was answered. He said, if God will be with me, and God says, I'll be with you before. And they said, if God watches over me, and God said, I'll watch over you wherever you go. And Jacob said, and let me come back peacefully to my father's house. God said, I'll bring you back peacefully. And Jacob said, and if God gives me bread to eat, and God and the Holy One, blessed be he, said, yes, I won't leave you. And the term leave always talks about food, because it says, Lo ra'iti tzadik ne'azav. I never saw a righteous person who was left alone and his seed had to look for bread in Psalms 37:25. So the Tanchuma says everything Jacob asked for, God gave him. But wait a sec. God told him before he asked for it. First, God told him that he was going to do these things, and then Jacob asked for it in his vow. What does that mean? Why would Jacob ask for the exact same things that God already pledged that he was going to give him in the dream of the ladder? This is what has to be understood. This is not a conditional vow. This is a pledge which Jacob is taking upon himself. Let me explain. Jacob realizes this is his call to greatness. This is his call by God to the shlichut, to be God's emissary in this world. And he understands the importance of this moment. This is his point of clarity, as I said in other places, where he understands why he is in this world. And he understands the significance of this moment. And he turns to God after the dream when he wakes up. And he says, you know what? I'm going to take a vow. Not only you are thrusting this upon me, God, I am accepting it. And I'm going to take a vow. Everything you said to me, where you said you'll watch over me, that you'll be with me, that you're going to bring me back to my father's house, that you'll be with me also to help me, make sure I have what to eat, all these things, I accept. And I'm adding to that my commitment. God is now my God, and I'm going to build a house for God, and I am your emissary, and I am accepting. That's what's going on here. This is not a condition. This is Jacob accepting the proposal that God thrust upon him in the dream and told him that this is what he wants to do. And Jacob is saying, yes, I will do this, and I accept. That's what a lot of people miss in what's going on here. So Jacob's accepting the burden of his mission. And this is a man who's both born into greatness and has greatness thrust upon him. But I want to give another example of a woman in this week's Parashat who was not born into greatness, but had greatness thrust upon her. And then she too, at one point, realized that greatness was thrust upon me. I must accept. And I am talking about Leah. the first wife of Jacob. You see, Jacob loved Rachel, and that was the one he wanted for a wife. And as you remember, Laban cheated him and gave him Rachel and gave him Leah instead, and he married Leah. He's not going to, even if he was cheated. But then he said, "I want to work for another 7 years, but you have to give me Rachel." Laban said, "Okay, but we don't give the younger one before the older one." And Laban agrees, and he works for another 7 years for Rachel. Now, when they get married, and he has now two wives, so God gives a child first to Leah. And Leah feels forsaken by Yaakov. She knows that it's not what he wanted. He married her just to be nice, meaning he kept her to be nice, but it was really a trick. And he could have said it's a trick. This is not right. But then God blesses Leah with children, and she's the first one to have children. And she has the first child, and he calls him Reuben. Why? Because God saw my affliction. Maybe now my husband will love me. Of course, this is always, so Leah has this feeling that she's unloved. Rightfully so, but it's not Jacob's fault. He's doing the respectful thing to do and keeping her. But she still feels unloved. And she calls the first then Reuben, meaning God saw my affliction. Maybe now my husband will love me. Of course, this is always the mistake of marriages that are not going so well, when they think, okay, we'll have kids and maybe that'll solve the problem. It never solves the problem. And then there's a second child. And she gets a second one, and his name is Shimon. And she says, well, God heard that I am unloved. She calls it hated. And that's why, and then she calls him Shimon, meaning God hears. And she has a third son, says, now my husband will have to accompany me wherever I go. She says, why? Because you have two children, you can hold them in two hands. You have a third, then your husband has to hold the third one. Because I now have borne for him 3 children. And therefore she called this third child Levi. So the first 3 children are all about her relationship with Jacob. They're all about the fact that she feels unloved, that she feels hated, that she's looking for ways to conquer Jacob's love. Now, Leah was not born into greatness. Her father, Lavan, idol worshiper, her grandfather, Betuel, idol worshiper. Lavan doesn't seem to be the straightest guy either. Arami, and the Midrash calls him Aramai. He tries to change the payment for Jacob many times, and Jacob has to use the advice of an angel in a dream to tell him what to do with the sheep, the dotted ones and the spotted ones and the striped ones. Those will be the ones that he's going to get. And only that way can he actually get his payment. So she's not born into greatness. But after the 4th child, Leah realized that she just had greatness thrust upon her. By the 4th child, she has a 4th child. And Leah all of a sudden realizes, I have 4 kids. Rachel doesn't. The maid servants don't have either. The shfachot, only me. I have 4 children. That means God has chosen me to continue the promise of Abraham through Jacob, through my children. That means God chose me. And just like Yaakov did in response to this being chosen, because a woman knows when she's chosen through her children. And she realizes this. And after she has this 4th son, she says, I'm not going to use the children anymore to try to get towards Jacob. I'm going to give thanks. Hapam odeh et Hashem. She called him Yehuda because now, this time, I am going to show gratitude to God and say thank you for choosing me to be the matron of the house of Jacob. And she takes upon herself this responsibility and this mission with great gratitude. And through this, she realizes her self-worth, that she is now the matron and the mother the main mother of the Jewish people. And because of that moment of clarity of Leah, where finally she realizes her mission, which is happening, and her worth, and stands face to face before God and accepts the mission, that child will be the kings of Israel, and finally the Messianic king of Israel also, through the house of David. So this is Leah, a woman who the importance was thrust upon her, and like Jacob, her husband, even though she was not born into greatness, she recognizes the mission. She accepts the mission with gratitude and with thanks. Shalom, shalom.